The Fisherman's Catch, a conservative bedtime story written by Thomas Wright, illustrated by Heather Dixon. There's no such thing as a good tax. Sir Winston Churchill. Once upon a time in a faraway land, on a faraway island there lived a fisherman named Hanaholani, or more simply put, Han. Han used a spear to catch fish in the vast ocean. He would spend all day long fishing, but only bring in a few fish. Han kept a couple of fish for his family, and he traded the rest with people in his village. Because it took so much time to catch fish with a spear, people gave Han many things for each one of his fish. One day, Han noticed a spider catching flies in her web. He was impressed that the clever spider did not have to hunt for flies. Instead, she waited patiently for them to get caught. Maybe I can make a web for fish, thought Han. Han traded with a traveling merchant for some rope and twine. Good luck, said the merchant. Thanks, said Han. Han was determined to make a web. He fished by day and worked on his web by night. He made many mistakes, but he did not give up. After a whole year of hard work, Han had finally made a web from rope. Han paddled his small boat out into the deep blue ocean. He was so excited to see whether his idea would work. Far from the shore, he stopped and he dropped his web into the water. After a few minutes, he pulled it back into the boat. There was nothing in it. Angry, Han picked up his web and he threw it as far away as he could, never wanting to see it again. He had forgotten the patience of the spider. Tired and sad, Han paddled back toward the shore. However, the more he paddled, the slower his little boat went. Looking around for the reason, he noticed that his web was caught on part of the boat. Curious, Han tugged on the web. It barely moved. Heart pounding, Han took hold of his web and he began to pull. Slowly, he brought the web back into the boat. It was filled with all kinds of fish. When Han returned home, the villagers were delighted to see so many fish. Since his catch was so large, Han decided he did not need as much in trade for each fish. Even the poorest villagers could afford some now. Everyone was happy. Well, almost everyone. Bera, the village chief, noticed not only that some people could not afford Han's fish as often as others, but that Han himself was becoming wealthy. It's not fair for one man to have so much while others have so much less, thought Bera. Bera called his men together and went to see Han. He explained to Han that they were going to take half of his catch for each day, for the good of the village. Han protested. I don't think it's right for you to take something that is not yours. Bera was upset. I'm the chief, he reminded Han. I know what's right for the village. Bera then took his men to push Han aside and take half of the fish back to the village. From that day on, Bera gave Han's fish to the poor of the village. At first, only the sick and truly needed were given fish, but after a short time, other villagers figured out that Bera would just give them fish if they stopped working. Why should we have to work when we can have free fish handed to us? They reasoned. As more people needed help, Bera took even more fish from Han. Not all of the villagers liked what the chief was doing to Han. Many of the farmers, hunters, and other workers grew very worried. If Han can have fish taken, then what will stop Bera from taking our things away? They wondered. Bera noticed that despite the fish he gave to the needy villagers, they always seemed to need more. It also seemed that regardless of how many fish Bera took from Han was still much more wealthy than everybody else. Bera took more and more fish from Han to give to the poor. After all, thought Bera. "Hans still has so much more than he needs." One day, the merchant who had traded rope and twine to Hans stopped by the village. He arrived just in time to see Bera and his men pull a cart away with most of Hans' catch. The merchant asked, "Why are they taking your fish away?" Hans sadly told the merchant what had happened. "I have an idea," said the merchant. "We need a fisherman in our village and would love to have you come live with us." The merchant promised Han that his village would not take away any of his catch. They would simply be happy to trade for the fish. Han decided to go with the merchant and start a brand new life. Bera came by the next day for fish, but Han's house was empty. He looked through the village. He went out to the shore. He wondered, where could Han be? He returned to the village with no fish. Many of the villagers were angry. It was then Bera realized that there were others in the village with more than they needed. He could take from them and give to the less fortunate. Bera started taking from those that still worked to give their things to the poor villagers. This made the people who worked angry. They had struggled and sacrificed to grow the food and create the things that Bera was simply taking from them. One by one, they also decided to leave. Bera did not understand how his village had become a bad place to live. He thought that by taking from those with plenty and giving to those in need, he was making things fair for everyone. Soon, Bera's village became deserted. Meanwhile, the people in the merchant's village were thankful Han had joined them. They liked to watch as he went out into his boat to catch fish. Han became very wealthy, but felt that he should be generous with his wealth and his knowledge. He helped others achieve their own ideas and dreams. Inspired by Han, farmers thought of new ways to grow crops. Hunters came up with new ideas to catch animals. Weavers tried new methods to create baskets. Not every idea was successful, but some of them were. Han's new village became known as a place of hard work and great wealth. It became a land of opportunity. People came there to try and live a better life. Because of their hard work, Han and the people in the merchant's village lived very, very happily ever after. Questions. Have you ever had a good idea? Did it work the first time you tried it? Probably not. Why were the fish less expensive when Han was able to catch more at once? How did you feel when Bera took Han's fish? Can trying to make something fair have the opposite effect?